feel like a pastor or a political leader with a teleprompter. Yeah. All right. We're going to continue with the prophecy that I started a few months ago. As I said in the first sermon, the prophecies repeat and enlarge. In other words, unlike many prophetic interpreters that feel that this prophecy is here and then the next one continues, or this one's over here, this one's over here, the majority of prophecies in the Bible are over the same exact time period. They just repeat and they add details or they enlarge the prophecy. And so as we continue part 3 here, I'm not going to go into details of the previous ones because I don't have time. But up until now, you probably have most understanding what the basic prophecies are at this time anyways. So let's go ahead. The book of Job is what I'm going to talk about first. The book of Job is unique. Jewish scholars and even many biblical scholars outside of the Jewish sect say that this is the oldest book of the Bible. It was written before the 5 books of Moses. So this has the oldest manuscripts. The oldest manuscripts found are on the book of Job. It reveals the battle behind the scenes of the great controversy. And that's significant. It starts out by saying, in the land of Uz there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, and had a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. Continues to say that in 6 through 8 that one day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered, the Lord, "From roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There was no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." So not only was he the richest man on earth, he was also one that showed his faithfulness to God. And Job 1, 11 and 12 says, I'm shortening it here. Satan says, "Stretch out your hand." Keep in mind, I want you to focus on some things that maybe you haven't paid attention to. Satan says to God, "Stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." And God turns around and says, "Very well then, everything he has is in your power. But on the man himself do not lay a finger." All right? And then 13 through 19, the oxen and the donkeys were taken, and the servants were killed by the Sabaeans. The fire of God, now this is one, the fire of God fell from the heavens and burned up the sheep and the servants. The next servant said, "The Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties, took your camels and killed your servants." And then the 4th servant come back and said, "Your sons and daughters were feasting, and a mighty wind swept and collapsed the house, and they are dead." So the servants saw these things. At least one of them pointed out, said this, God did this, right? Well, at the beginning, God made it clear that even though Satan said, "You stretch out your hand and do it," God says, "No, I'm going to give them to you." And one of the servants come back and said, "I saw God, fire of God come down." It's kind of like have you ever seen the insurance policies that say isn't insured against the act of God, right? There's that misunderstanding of who God is runs throughout history. Then Job 2, 3, and 5, Satan comes back and says, "Hey, you still protected him," right? Had another excuse of why Job was still faithful, right? He still maintains his integrity, though you incited me against him to ruin him without any reason. Okay, so then he says to God, "Stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face." So God again says, "Okay, you go ahead, I'll give him, you can do everything, but do not kill him," right? So he afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. And then Job 2:9 and 8:3 and 4 says, his advice from his wife and his friends were, his wife said, curse God and die. Right? Now, what do you think her understanding of the situation was? Did she blame God for what was happening? Do you think she blamed God for what was happening? Yeah. Curse God and die. You're faithful to God and look what he's done to you. Right? And then his friends says, does God pervert justice? Does the Almighty pervert what is right? So their understanding of justice and what is right, they said, when your children sinned against him, he gave them over to the penalty of their sin. So he's saying, hey, your kids just reaped the result of what they were doing. They must have been bad children, right? So God's justice come down on them and killed them. Well, we know, thankfully from Job, who did it? Who destroyed the children? It was Satan, right? So I want to skip forward now in that same idea of the great controversy, who's behind the scenes and what people perceive is going on, right? People perceive all these things come from God when they necessarily don't, right? And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against his angels. I want you to think about that statement right there. There was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against his angels. By nature, what is that? The normal person reading that, what would they picture in their mind? But a physical, interactive war of people fighting each other, right? Satan and God, or Michael and his angels against Satan and his angels fighting hand-to-hand combat. On one side, you have the all-powerful creator of the universe, who with a mere thought can create the worlds. On the other, you have a rebellious creature whose jealousy has led to open rebellion. With one thought, it could be over. What kind of war is that? I mean, if you think about it, the all-powerful creator of the universe against a small created creature. Right? Would there be any chance if there was a physical war? Would not be an opportunity, right? One mere thought, he'd be out of existence. So what type of war is it? Ezekiel 28:15 and 17 says, thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou was created till iniquity was found in thee. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. So something happened in the heart of Lucifer. We call it pride, right? Lifted up, thought more of himself than who he was. Isaiah 14:13 and 14 says, thou hast said in thine heart, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will be like the Most High. So pride and jealousy ripened to open rebellion until what happened? Lucifer had presented the purposes of God in a false light, misconstruing and distorting them to excite dissent and dissatisfaction. He cunningly drew his hearers on to give utterance to their feelings. Then these expressions were repeated by him when it would serve his purpose, as evidence that the angels were not fully in harmony with the government of God. While claiming for himself perfect loyalty to God, he urged that changes in the order and laws of heaven were necessary for the stability of the divine government. Thus, while working to excite opposition to the law of God and to instill his own discontent into the minds of angels under him, he was ostensibly seeking to remove dissatisfaction and to reconcile disaffected angels to the order of heaven. While secretly fomenting discord and rebellion, he with consummate craft caused it to appear as his sole purpose to promote loyalty and to preserve harmony and peace. That's out of Patriarchs and Prophets. So pride and jealousy took over until he started surmising how to most effectively get angels on his side. And the only way he found to do it was to convince them that this was for God's own good. that he knew something better than God, that he could do something to help God out, and that they would not be loyal if they did not go along with it, and therefore deceiving one-third of the angels. In Revelation 12:7-9 says, "Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought, and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him." So the rebellion of heaven, the rebellion of Satan, was brought down to this earth. Genesis 3:1 says, "Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made, and he said to the woman, Yea, hath God said, You shall not eat of every tree in the garden?" So questioning God and insinuating doubt to God's motives. Now, last time I spoke, we talked about the obedience of love and how your motive for obedience really matters, right? Well, here, Satan was insinuating that God's motives were less than pure, that God had selfish motives in what he was doing. Now we are talking about Satan's goal of misrepresenting God's motives. So Eve was led to doubt God's motives and believe the lie that God could not be trusted. Thus the rebellion was cast to the earth, and humanity entered Satan's side of the war. 2 Corinthians 10:4-6 says, "The weapons we fight with are not weapons of the world." This kind of goes back to what was that war like in heaven? "The weapons we fight with are not weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ." So what we're fighting against are pretensions and arguments that set themselves up against God. The battle is over the very character of God and who God is. God's character. The earth was dark through misapprehension of God, that the gloomy shadows might be lightened, that the world might be brought back to God. Satan's deceptive power was to be broken. This could not be done by force. The exercise of force is contrary to the principles of God's government. He desires only the service of love, and love cannot be commanded. It cannot be won. It cannot be won by force or authority. Only by love is love awakened. To know God is to love him. His character must be manifested in contrast to the character of Satan. This work only one being in all the universe could do. Only he who knew the height and depth and love of God could make it known. Upon the world's dark night, the Son of Righteousness must rise with healing in his wings. That's out of Desire of Ages 22. This darkness is the ignorance of God's character and the misunderstanding of his love. So the battle is over the character of God. That's simply what Satan was trying to dethrone in heaven, was to get people to doubt who God was. And that doubt was transferred to Eve in humanity, right? The doubt of God and his love. So Satan's main goal, keep this in mind, it's foundational. Satan's main goal is to misrepresent God, his law, his government, and his faithful church. So every deceptive thing of Satan is trying to destroy those foundational things, right? As we have previously discovered, there's a little horn power in Daniel 7 that speaks blasphemy, and it's the symbol of the Roman Church, whom acted on Satan's behalf here in the earlier centuries of Earth's history. We know that because it fulfilled the 10 descriptions given in Daniel 7. There's only one power in Earth's history that matches these descriptions, and that's the Roman Church. That same church, that same description, as we talked about last time, is reflected in Revelation 13:2. "The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like a lion." Now this is important. The dragon gave the beast his power his throne and great authority. Let's turn to Revelation 13. If you could turn to Revelation 13 in your Bibles. Revelation 13. This is Satan's representation on earth. And it's interesting to see because even though we understand that as prophetic people of prophecy, many people don't understand that the beast is represented by a church. That there's actually a church on earth, claims to be Christian, that is actually Satan's church, or Satan's methods, employs his methods, maligns God's character. Right? So the dragon gave the beast his power and great authority. So what power? Think about this. In this warfare, remember, it's not about weapons, it's not about power, it's about the knowledge of God. If a foundational war is on the knowledge of God, then what power does the dragon have? The only real power the dragon has is that of deception. He doesn't have the truth on his side. He has the power of a lie. The power of a lie. And a lie only has power when it's believed. Think about that. A lie only has power when it's believed. Right? So we're talking about a system that is believed by a multitude of people that has published or portrayed a lie of who God is. This is what Satan's working for. In Revelation 13, it continues and says that there's another power that was to arise out of the earth. Now remember, the other powers that we talked about arose out of the sea, which is a multitude of people. Out of the earth means that it was an unpopulated area, a sparsely populated area that this power is to rise from. The saints in Revelation 12 were told to flee here for protection on the wings of an eagle. This is the second beast of Revelation. And this beast here, those who refuse to comply, will not be able to buy or sell. This beast will have worldwide monetary control. And I'd like to read something out of the Great Controversy, chapter 25, concerning this beast. The beast with lamb-like horns was seen coming up out of the earth. At the end of the 1260 years of the first beast, which is 1798, instead of the sea, peoples, nations, and tongues, where did the saints flee, carried on the wings of an eagle to safety from the first beast? In the book of Revelation, specifically Revelation 12:14, the imagery of the saints fleeing, carried on the wings of eagle, refers to the woman, representing the church, being given 2 wings of a great eagle to fly into the wilderness, escaping from the persecution of the dragon, and finding safety in a protected place for a period of time. Now, if you have the original Great Controversies, this is all out of pages 439 through 443. The beast with the lamb-like horns spoke like a dragon, and he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. And in between, she says that it wasn't necessarily worshiping the first beast, but giving homage to through some of its beliefs. So I kind of think of that, okay, it doesn't actually have to do with the first beast so much as the principles that were exhibited by the first beast, creating an image. Being given 2 wings to fly like an eagle into the wilderness, escaping from the persecution of the dragon, and finding safety in a protected place for a period of time. This beast with lamb-like horns spoke like a dragon, and he exercised all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and caused the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the first beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. Now I'm going to stop there for a second and think we were created in God's what? Image. We were created in God's image. And this second beast was to be an image of the first beast, right? We are not God, right? But we are created in his image with the ability to make choices and have freedom, right? And so what gave the beast its power? This power to deceive, to believe a lie. Believing a lie breaks the circle of love and trust. That's what believing a lie does. The speaking of the nation is the action of its legislative and judicial authorities. Think of that. The prediction that it will speak as a dragon and exercise all the authority of the first beast plainly foretells a development of the spirit of intolerance and persecution that was manifested by the nations represented by the dragon and the leopard-like beasts. So what she's saying is not necessarily the first beast reincarnated, but it's using the same principles and the same methods as the first beast. Telling those who dwell on the earth, the founders of the nation wisely sought to guard against the employment of secular power on the part of the church with its inevitable result, intolerance and persecution. The Constitution provides that Congress shall make no laws respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, and that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office of public trust under the United States. Only in flagrant violation of these safeguards to the nation's liberty can any religious observance be enforced by civil authority. But the inconsistency of such action is no greater than it's represented in the symbol. It is the beast with the lamb-like horns, in profession pure, gentle, and harmless, that speaks as a dragon, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast. So that's out of Great Controversy 439 through 443. So what gives the dragon its power? Believing the lie. It shall have no power over you, because you will have the peace that passes understanding. You think about the martyrs that died while burning, shouting praises to God. How could they do that? Because they didn't believe the lie. Because they worshiped the creator of heaven and earth. What destroys a lie? What destroys a lie? The truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life, right? Jesus destroys the lie. Revelation 13, I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb. Another power to, The two separating things also in Revelation between the groups, there are actually three. I want you to catch this, because I've never seen this before. But there are actually three groups at the end. The Revelation 13, 16 through 17 says, he causes all, both small, great, rich, and poor, and free and bond, to receive a mark on the right hand or in their foreheads. It doesn't say and, it says or. And that no man might buy or sell, or save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. God's seal, so Revelation 7, 2 and 3 says, I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the four angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. So I want you to think about this. There's actually three groups there. There's those with the seal of God. There's those with the seal, with the mark of the beast in their forehead, and there's those with the mark of the beast on their hands. Right? Three groups that are given, and this will come into play here in a couple minutes, as you'll see. It's pretty interesting. Those who have the seal, we are told, is a settling into the truth, both intellectually and spiritually, so they cannot be moved. That's the definition given in the Spirit of Prophecy. The seal is a settling into the truth, both intellectually and spiritually, so they cannot be moved. For the last 4 years, there have been an intellectual, moral, and spiritual assault on our society, a coordinated effort to surrender our wills to self-proclaimed authority and experts, a massive global deception to forward authoritarianism, secularism, and the surrender of our individual freedoms. But we are now living in a historical and I believe a biblical moment when things are rapidly changing within the last 2 weeks. And I want to take you to the book of Daniel. If we'll go to Daniel 11. Keep these things in mind that we just talked about. Let's go to Daniel 11. And I'm going to give a little synopsis here of just the brief beginning of it because it's historical, and I might even skip past some of it for sake of time. But Daniel 11, 1 through 4, the vision is given during the 3rd year of Cyrus's reign and references 3 more kings to arise, followed by a 4th king more powerful than the rest, but who would have his empire broken up and parceled out to the 4 winds, the 4 points of the compass. The 3 kings to follow Cyrus were, I can't even say their names, right? And Darius was one of them. Xerxes, right? And eventually the empire was conquered by Alexander the Great in 336 to 323 BC, who died at the height of his power and whose kingdom was broken into 4 regions, Seleucus, Lysimachus, Cassander, and Ptolemy, right? Were the generals that took over from there. The 4 heads of the leopard that we talked about in Daniel 7, right? And Daniel 11, 5 through 14 depicts the battles between the Hellenistic dynasties after the death of Alexander. There are various Bible commentaries that can give the specific historical events corresponding to these verses. The king of the north represents the portion of the Persia corresponding to the ancient Babylon, the Syrian portion, while the king of the south represents Egypt. Now this is where it gets important, because this is where we're actually told that the final scenes of Daniel 11 will be the final scenes of Earth's history. And I believe we're seeing the final scenes right now. Daniel 11, 16 through 18 says, in verse 16, we have the appearance of Rome, the kingdom that establishes itself in the beautiful land, which refers to the place where God dwells with his people. In verse 22, his power kills the prince of the covenant, which is a reference to the crucifixion of Jesus, thus confirming this section refers to pagan Rome. Now, why I'm synopsis, this is actually about 3 hours of materials, so that's why I'm not going over them in detail, but this is kind of, again, repeat and enlarge. Daniel 11 is a repeat and enlarge, and we're going through the same things that we went through in Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Revelation 13 is also here in Daniel 11, and it fits like a hand in a glove. Daniel 11, 29 through 39, these verses transition us. Now, this is important. I want you to pay attention to the reading here, the understanding, the meaning of what's about to be said here. These verses transition us from literal Israel to spiritual Israel. Those who are like Abraham in character and faith, and from pagan Rome as the king of the north to Christian Rome as the king of the north. Now, when we talk about Israel today, many people are confused because they still think of a geographical location of a people of Israel. Well, who are the seed of Abraham after Christ's death? The New Testament is explicit on this. Anyone who has faith in Christ becomes the seed of Abraham, right? Where the Jews felt that they were the seed of Abraham by lineage, we are the seed of Abraham by faith. In ancient Israel, we are now Israel by faith. Right? And so the transition of the king of the north from a geographical location now to represent a principle or a system of governing is now the same thing. It follows suit with all the rest of the prophecy that way. So we're going to Christian Rome, which we're talking about an apostate Christianity, right? The transition from the first beast to the second beast, the papacy to apostate Christianity, carrying on the same lies that the papacy had. Okay, follow me with this. Daniel 11, 29 through 39. These verses, I duplicated that one. Daniel 11, 40 through 45. Now, this is where we're getting to the meat of the sermon here. These verses describe the events pertinent to our world today. The world is stirred with a spirit of war. The prophecy of the 11th chapter of Daniel has nearly reached its complete fulfillment. Soon the scenes of trouble spoken of in the prophecies will take place. That's out of Testimonies 9, page 14. There are 3 players in Daniel 11 at the end. There's the king of the north, the king of the south, and a beautiful land. Those of you who were with us 2 years ago when Tim Rosenberg was here to talk about the final prophecies of Daniel 11, where he refers to the king of the south as the Muslim countries, there are three basic different views on that. One is geographical, one is Muslim, and the other is Egypt. Now, I want to talk about this because this is really important, especially how it applies with what's happened really recently here. The north, Babylon, Persia, Rome, represents the powers that claim to believe in God, but that use the methods of this sinful world, specifically the imposition of law and the coercive force of state. Specifically, the imposition of law and the coercive force of the state. Nebuchadnezzar claimed to believe in Daniel's God, yet used imposed law to enforce it, right? Darius claimed to believe in Daniel's God, yet used imposed law to enforce it. The same sort of thing. And eventually, pagan Rome became papal Rome, which claimed to represent God, but misrepresented God, Daniel 7, 20 through 25. So the king of the north is the system that merges a belief in God with enforcement through legislation, forming a religious imperialism. So the idea of church and state aligning represents the king of the north. All right? The king of the south, Egypt, signifies powers that deny God, as Pharaoh famously said, "Who is God that I should obey him?" Exodus 5:2. The king of the south began its final end-time assault of the king of the north with the French Revolution, which denied all gods and enthroned the goddess of reason. By the way, pause here, just a side note. Did you know that Statue of Liberty was given to us from France? Did you know that the Statue of Liberty is the goddess of reason? It is. The French give us the goddess of reason as a symbol for our country, which denied all gods and enthroned the goddess of reason, laying the foundation for the rise of atheism, humanism, and secularism in the Western world, which has been advancing against the king of the north ever since, and especially these last 4 years, right? The great city in whose streets the witnesses are slain and where their dead bodies lie is spiritually Egypt. Of all nations presented in Bible history, Egypt is the most boldly denied the existence of the living God and resisted his commands. No monarch ever ventured upon more open and high-handed rebellion against the authority of heaven than did the king of Egypt. When the message, now this is out of the Greek controversy, to kind of back this up. When the message was brought to him by Moses in the name of the Lord, Pharaoh proudly answered, "Who is Jehovah, that I should hearken unto his voice to let Israel go? I know not Jehovah, and moreover, I will not let Israel go." Exodus 5:2. This is right out of her quote. This is atheism. And the nation represented by Egypt would give voice to a similar denial of the claims of the living God and would manifest a like spirit of unbelief and defiance. The great city is also compared spiritually to Sodom. The corruption of Sodom and breaking the law of God was especially manifested in licentiousness. And this sin was also to be preeminent characteristic of the nation that should fulfill the specifications of this scripture. So the king of the south lines up with what we're seeing, atheism against God. I don't know if any of you realize it or not, but during the presidential race here last year, the one that opposed Trump got up in one of her meetings, and there were two young men from a college that got up and said, "Jesus is Lord, Jesus is Lord." And she looks out at them, she says, "You're at the wrong meeting, you need to be down the road." I don't know if you heard that one or not, but the denial of God on one side is supreme, right? The beautiful land, the third character in Daniel 11, refers to the place where God dwells with his people, in the middle, right? I like the way Tim Rosenberg put it. He says, you have the Muslims that worship on Friday, the apostate Christianity that worships on Sunday, and in the middle you have the Sabbath, right? Kind of a symbolism there as well. I really liked that, appreciated that. So according to Revelation 13, Protestant America sometime after 1798 will form an image to the Roman Church in instituting moral, religious systems that will lead to legislating morality and persecuting of God's people in the name of Jesus. This is represented in Daniel as the king of the north. I believe we're now seeing the fulfillment, or the beginning of the fulfillment, of Daniel 11. Mark is on the forehead and hand. The hand represents those who not necessarily, think about this, the mark on the forehead is those that accept the idea that God is in control and yet wants to control everybody else using Satan's principles. The one on the hand denies the idea of a God, but goes along with the actions, which would be atheism, humanism, and that sort of thing. So no, I don't believe that everybody in the end is going to, quote, accept God. There will still be those three at the end, those that ultimately deny God, those that say they believe in God and are forwarding the beast's power, and those who are following Christ. Joining with either the king of the north or the king of the south is a trap of Satan, in which he gets people to think that they are fighting for what is right, while in reality, they are joining with him. I was asked by a couple people this week what I feel about, and I'm going to give some personal things how I feel about the last couple weeks. Now, I love to see evil exposed. I love that the fact that all this corruption is being exposed and brought out to people, because it allows people to rethink where they stand. I do believe in the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights. This is where I'm conflicted, because I don't believe in executive actions. I don't believe in executive powers the way they're being used by Trump. Even though it is doing good, the end does not justify the means. So, starting with Kennedy, the use of executive actions became very popular. Most of the things that Trump is doing are supposed to go through Congress, right? He's taking powers into his own hands which really aren't granted to him by the Constitution. And as a historian, have you ever heard of the book, The Two Republics by A.T. Jones? He parallels the history of Rome with the history of the United States. And he talks about that there will be a Caesar at the end that will claim the power of the people and stand for the people. Now, I don't know how much you know about Caesar, but there was supposed to be only two people in charge of Rome. It was not supposed to be a triumvirate. It was supposed to be just two people in charge, right? Those were the plebeians and those were the patricians, supposed to be the representatives of the people, and they were in the Senate. Well, he came through with his ideals because he was a general and he was popular with the people, and he went actually in front of the people and said, hey, this is one of the things established by Rome, is that if I bring it out to the people and the majority of people vote for me, then it has to pass. It bypasses the Senate and everything, right? So when the people vote what I bring out forward as a general, and they all vote as a majority to pass what I say, then Congress has nothing to do with it, Senate has nothing to do with it, and that's what he did. So then he went back to the Senate. He says, hey, I know you're all supposed to have two in power, but I want to be the third. Give me the third power. I want to be, and basically the Senate became a rubber stamp for everything that Caesar wanted because he became so popular, right? Rubber stamp, rubber stamp. Well, you probably know what the end of Caesar's life was, right? The senators killed him. The Senate killed him. I'm not saying that the Senate's going to kill Trump, but I see this same thing playing out today, and I thought, wow, A.T. Jones had some foresight in history. What's happening? We are living in some very, very interesting times, especially if you're a history buff. This is really some powerful stuff happening right now. Oh, and I don't know. I don't know what's going to end up. I do know what the prophecies say. And I do like what's happening right now, as far as, like Elon Musk says, the best way to get rid of a cancer, best way to get rid of a disease is to expose it to sunlight, right? So his idea is just bring out everything that's happened, just show it to the people, and they'll see what's been going on, and that'll stop it, that'll get rid of it, and maybe so. I think that principle is good, but. Yeah, I'm definitely excited as a student of prophecy. I can see the things happening right now within our own lives, our own history right now, what's happening, right? I mean, we're right there. We're on the cusp of it. Now, Ellen White talks about a temporal millennium happening. And this is interesting because the one thing that happened with Caesar is he called it a golden age. And what did Trump say this last week? We are going to enter a golden age. He said it word for word. And I'm like, oh my goodness, he's even right out of Rome. And I think we're going to enter into a time of prosperity that we've never seen before. But with that, right? With that, nothing comes free. And here's my concern. When people are doing really well, you don't want to mess with that. And if there's strings attached to that really doing well and you threaten those strings, people aren't going to be happy with you. You see what I'm saying? So this all seems to be lining up. As we look at the final scenes of Earth's history as portrayed in Daniel and Revelation, we see these things happening. Psalm 91, 7-9 says, if you say, the Lord is my refuge, and you make Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you. No disaster will come near your tent, for he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Who's the rock? Jesus is the rock. And he's going to bring an end to this world as we know it. Jesus is coming soon. Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Revelation 12, 13, and 17 all end with the second coming of Jesus. Job lived through a very chaotic time in his life. He suffered more than any of us can imagine, and yet he was able to say, though he slay me, yet will I serve him. Jesus invites us to give our lives to him. He is the answer to all of life's problems. He promises that if we accept him into our hearts, we can have the peace that passes all understanding. And that is very inviting in today's chaotic world.